Mr. Lobo here at Times Square for the Sleepless Knights podcast. We are ready to light up our jumbo scoreboard. As you know, our primary goal is 1,074 listeners on Patreon. And thanks to your monthly support, our total number of patrons comes to... maybe the sign's broken. People, as you know, the Sleepless Knights podcast hosted by Mr. Lobo of Cinema Insomnia and that pantsless producer over here, Paul Sanders of Bestow TV, is weird, fun, experimental, obtuse, and thought-provoking. If quality programs mean something to each of you and you enjoy being a fly on the wall for our 3 a.m. conversations, please support the show monthly on Patreon. Take out your phones right now. Patreon.com/Sleepless Knights podcast for $4 or more a month and help us reach our goal. That's patreon.com/SLEEPLESSKNIGHTS Now that's only one D in podcast, even though we still emphasize the I.
Hey, where's everyone going?
They're all going home to sign up with us on Patreon.
Attention Sleepless Knights. Thank you for consuming this OSI 74 product broadcast, live from the Black Knight satellite. For optimum performance and safety, your host, Mr. Lobo, asks that you please listen to these instructions carefully. When in a hospital or other healthcare facility, observe the restrictions on the use of electronic devices. Switch off before boarding an aircraft to prevent interference with communication systems. Do not operate this device in the presence of flammable gases or fumes, chemical plants, or where blasting operations are in progress. Always listen hands-free while driving a vehicle. Failure to observe these instructions may lead to immediate termination. It's time now for the show to begin. Thank you. Have a very pleasant evening.
You're not dreaming. You're listening to the Sleepless Knights podcast. I am your host, Mr. Lobo, and out in space is our producer, Paul Sanders of Bestow TV. Paul, are you out there? Hello?
I'm somewhere.
Okay.
I'm always out there.
As you know, we're in the dimension 1 foot to the left, I think, still, aren't we?
Sure.
And time flows strangely in this dimension. I mean, as it did before. I don't know, like podcast years is different than normal time. Everything's measured in nanoseconds. So it's hard to know what's cause and what's effect and how long it takes between when we say something and when you hear it. But recently, there has been a vacuum, a power vacuum in the world of entertainment, because I think
some might call it a Dyson.
A Dyson, sure. Like a Hoover, if you will. Oreck, perhaps.
Right.
A David Oreck-sized event.
Right. It depends on what country you're in.
A dirt devil of an event.
Dustbuster.
A dustbuster crisis. But in the world of entertainment, there is a big gap, and I think it's sent ripples through our community of fans. The passing of the late, great director, producer, Richard Donner. Mm-hmm. Richard Donner. And Richard Donner, I feel like he should have an executive producer credit on this show, because of as often as we've mentioned something that's somehow connected to Richard Donner. Because, I mean, it started early on. Goonies Monster Squad started early on. We were talking about the Goonies,
that's
right?
Like and
you were a Goonies kid. I was a Monster Squad kid. Mm-hmm. That was something that came up a lot. And Goonies was a movie that really affected not just a generation of kids when the movie came out, but multiple generations of kids who saw that movie. And one of my pet things is Superman. I don't know how many times I brought up the original, or not the original, but just the 70s version of Superman, and how wonderful it was, and how true to the character it was, and how effective it was. And all of those arguments that people make about why we can't do a Superman like that always fall down, because the 70s were awful. They were a brutal time, and people were cynical as hell. So he was not reflective of that time. Superman was an antidote to all of that. You know, Superman gave us a little optimism back. It wasn't just reflecting our bitterness like most of superheroes today are. So, but yeah, so definitely the fact that Richard Donner's treatment of Superman in Superman the movie, and you know, most of Superman 2 until he was kicked off that film. And then they brought in, what was that, Richard Lester, or I can't remember who they brought in to finish Superman 2. Doesn't matter.
Doesn't keep talking, and now we will look real quick.
But you know, they did. I think, you know, before the Snyder cut, I don't think the Snyder cut would have happened if there wasn't the Donner cut, because people wanted to see Richard Donner's vision so badly that they allowed him to recut Superman 2 with the footage that he had shot, and to try to make that footage work.
Right. It is Richard Lester, by the way.
Okay, good. All right, I got it right. Yeah. And then the end of Superman, the end of Superman 1 was originally going to be the end for Superman 2. So unfortunately, they already turned the world backwards. We've mentioned this idea before too. Is like, how do you top turning the world backwards?
Right. You reassemble the Great Wall of China with your eyesight. That's how you top it.
So you know, that's pretty amazing. So anyhow, he put the turning the world backwards in Superman 2. Now we almost need a redone Superman 1 so that we don't have him do that same move in 2 movies back to back. But of course, you know, the concept of the 3 villains from Krypton, and the amazing the way that the first Superman movie is really like 3 totally different films. You know, there's the sort of the space epic on Krypton, and then there's the great American story of Smallville, and then there's the amazing you know, action film happening in the metropolis for the climax. But yeah, wonderful film, a movie that opened the door for all of these superhero movies that we've been talking about. Right. You know, the whole modern wave of superhero films starts with Superman the movie. You know, I don't want to say there wouldn't be an MCU or a DCU, but certainly it helped shape all of that.
And like General Zod and stuff, that's all like content from the film, isn't that right? I mean, I don't think that those characters existed in the comics. I think those are original characters.
Not that I know. Yeah. Not that I.
And then they got adopted into the comics after the movies, and then they come and make another movie appearance several years later. So, I mean, I guess you got him to credit for that in the script writers.
Yes, absolutely. You know, and I don't know, like, I mean, it makes me want to dig into how much involvement he had overall with that.
He might have like producer credits and stuff. I know, like, his wife. Now, it was funny is that I've seen her name on a lot of things, including like the X-Men movies. And I was always curious to how she was related to him, if she was related to him or not, or whether or not it was a daughter. But I was never motivated enough to actually go and look it up. But when I saw the obituary and it was talking about his wife and how she was a producer too, then it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense then. And how she has a lot of producing credits with a lot of like Marvel, or not just Marvel, but just comic book movies in general.
Yeah. So again, I guess starts a good argument that the Superman film has its threads going through all of the modern superhero movies.
As a matter of fact, X-Men Origins Wolverine, not a good one, but Richard Donner has executive producer credit on that movie.
Wow, that's interesting. Well, and going back to things relatable to the podcast, when we had Fred Decker on the show, he talked about his time working on Tales from the Crypt. And of course, Richard Donner was a producer on that show and a mentor and a hero to Fred Decker. And Richard Donner directed several episodes of the Tales from the Crypt series, as well as producing all of the episodes of the original episodes of Tales of the Crypt, or being a producer on the original Tales from the Crypt. And to top that off, those horror anthology roots go all the way back to the original Twilight Zone, in which he directed many of the seminal episodes of Twilight Zone, including Nightmare on 20,000 Feet, the William Shatner story with the gremlin on the wing, which was one of the films chosen to represent Twilight Zone in the Twilight Zone movie in the 80s,
right?
Which he was also an executive producer of.
Which also comes all the way back to the podcast, because we've mentioned the movie several times.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we have mentioned the Twilight Zone movie several times, and Tales from the Crypt several times.
It's funny as I'm going through this list, and it's like we've often mentioned, or at least I've mentioned often, the Lethal Weapon series.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I feel like we don't go too long without you mentioning Lethal Weapon.
And there was one other one that popped. Well, of course, now he didn't direct it, but he produced the Lost Boys.
Right,
that's made it to the podcast
certainly,
multiple times. Remember the one show we were at, they played Lost Boys on the screen, the big screen.
We've referenced Lost Boys on Cinema Insomnia as well.
Right.
So yeah, definitely always present. And I don't know a lot about Richard Donner, but just through his work, I must feel like this is a person who loves movies, who loves fantasy, who loves popular fiction. Because I feel like he was in his 90s and he was still trying to make that next Lethal Weapon movie. You know what I mean?
Right.
And he, so to have such a robust career going all the way back to, the original Twilight Zone, and, Man from U.N.C.L.E. and all these great, series,
right.
All the way to,
the Banana Splits Adventure Hour.
Oh yeah, because
he did 3 episodes.
He did the Danger Island. Yeah, he did the Danger Island sequences for the Banana Splits. Yeah, and boy, we mentioned Banana Splits on here too.
Gilligan's Island. There's a lot of stuff on here. Wow.
Yes. And those things still resonate. I mean, Man from U.N.C.L.E. still resonates. They tried to make a movie.
They tried to reboot that. Yes.
Several times. Perry Mason is one of those things they just keep trying to bring back.
They try to reboot Wild Wild West.
Get Smart is another one.
Banana Splits, they did reboot. They made that into that horror franchise. They
did, which is funny with all of them. That was probably one of the more successful reboots. Wild Wild West, they certainly did.
Right.
They didn't. Again, that was another one where I don't think that they did it justice. That certainly wasn't successful.
Yeah,
but the fact that
I don't hate that film.
I don't hate it either. And what's really funny is
it's grown on me over the years. I remember I didn't like it in the beginning, but it's really grown on me that I
may have to go back to it.
I revisit it like once or twice.
It is funny because like in the world of things that are steampunk, there's no movie or any there's no with Star Wars fans, it's like, or sci-fi fans, there's so many big things to point to. If you're a cyberpunk person, there's so many big movies you can point to. If you're a steampunk, all the things that you can point to are notorious bombs, like Van Helsing or Wild Wild West or League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Right.
For whatever reason, that's a whole subgenre in search of a big blockbuster movie. But there isn't one. But yeah, one of the closest would be Wild Wild West. But again, today we're going to talk about the memory of Richard Donner. Obviously we're still feeling it. It's been a while, and we're still feeling the loss of Richard Donner. Let's get nostalgic together and talk about all the great films he's given us when we come back.
Howdy, y'all, and welcome to Dixie's Murder Minute, where we explore the possibility that women are evil and love murder. Want to kill some time with me? So, can we talk about the Donner Party? Wait a minute. Don't you mean Jeffrey Dahmer, Party of One? So, you want me to cover the Donner Party because it's a pun. Did they even murder anyone? I mean, I thought they just waited for their friends and family to die of starvation and exposure before they went to Flavortown on their corpses. Hold on. Oh. No shit. Okay. No, they were totally murderers. So apparently the party included a pair of rarely mentioned natives who refused to engage in cannibalism. They fled in fear of their lives, and it turns out that fear was justified because once those dirtbag cannibals ran out of meat, a party member named William Foster hunted them down. He then shot them in the back of the head, and those bastards ate them. Supposedly the only time during the winter that anyone was murdered for food. Supposedly. Anyway, you could learn more about the Donner Party on the internet, like I did. This has been Dixie's Murder Minute. Music by Carl Casey at White Bat Audio.
You were saying there was another film that they brought back.
I was just looking through these credits here and stuff, and they rebooted The Sixth Sense. This was apparently a TV series in 1972, and. They M. Night Shyamalan.
I think
how do you say that?
Shyamalan? That's how you say it. But no, I think that's a different thing altogether. Oh. I think that's just it's just this coincidence that I think that's not the same.
Oh, okay. Was the guy dead the entire series? Was he like leaping from body to body trying to solve undead crimes? Is that
it was
kind of
like yes, it was Quantum Leap before its time. One of the things that I guess, as a horror movie host, the Omen, I don't think we've ever mentioned the Omen on the podcast.
Yeah, that's weird. It's like everything that's on here, and it's like the number one horror thing that should be on a horror podcast, and I don't think we've ever really talked about it. Not that I can talk about it. I don't think I've ever seen the Omen, but
that's might be why we haven't talked about it. But I think it's amazing because that movie hit so hard in 1976. I think it was like the 1-2 punch of The Exorcist and the Omen. And The Exorcist, for whatever reason, I think everybody remember. What's interesting is I think The Exorcist has more potential for being funny. Mm-hmm. With the pea soup and the head spinning around and all that. Right. Whereas the Omen is, especially if I don't know. It's like I think it's one of those things that's harder to make jokes about because it was a pretty scary movie. The only thing I see constantly as a meme is the one babysitter that jumps out the window with the noose around her neck. It's all for you, Damien. Right. And then she jumps out the window, whatever. And then and they always have the picture with her with the noose around her neck, and the meme will say something like, me at a party trying to liven things up. But the only other joke I can think of with the Omen is they did a really great Saturday Night Live sketch where John Belushi was the kid, and so he just sort of was on his knees or pretending to be a kid, and John Belushi with those shifty kind of funny expressions that he has. Mm-hmm. Being this like silent demonic little boy, and then Buck Henry, who is the priest, I think he lifts his hair up to try to see if he sees the 3 6s on his forehead, but he's looking at him upside from the top down. So he's like, "Oh no, it's fine. It's just 3 9s."
I would say there's another movie. This is during the time when they were doing all those kind of spoof movies, like when like Scary Movie and all that came out, and Naked Gun 33 1/3, roughly around that time. And there was one, I think it was Dom DeLuise was in it.
Yeah.
And that's where like they look up they go to try to look at the number on the back or wherever it is, the back of the neck or the forehead or wherever it is. And it says made in China.
Oh, geez. The mark of the beast. It is interesting. And I don't know if he had anything to do with any of the Omen sequels. I don't think that he did. But that was the first time I ever saw Sam Neill was in the Omen sequel as Damien grown up, the final conflict. And that movie, I could believe that Sam Neill was that kid grown up. I thought they did a good job continuing that. But
the only thing that IMDb is kicking up that I can see that
is the original Omen.
Is the original Omen and the TV movie in 1995. He was the executive producer too.
Oh, they did a TV movie. Did not know that.
Mm-hmm. And now it's a thing you know.
I guess he directed the Cyndi Lauper video for the Goonies also.
He did the Cyndi Lauper video, and he did the It's Probably Me Sting song from Lethal Weapon 3, I believe.
Oh, okay.
So he has some music video direction.
Now, Lady Hawk, I remember like
I've got a Lady Hawk story. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. I feel like we've mentioned Lady Hawk.
I don't know if we have or not, but
go aheid. I want to hear your Lady Hawk story because all I could remember is when I went to go see it as a kid. I remember not seeing it because I remember like I was going to go out on a date or something, and I felt like that was going to be a girls' movie or something. I guess
too girly. My mom wanted to see it, and she took me with. This was out in
85.
85. I can't math fast enough. So I would have been 10. I can't math fast enough. Well, I probably would have been 9 at that time. So I was 9 years old, and she went and took to see it, and I believe it's not too far into the movie that we get some like gratuitous nudity or some sort of nudity.
Oh yeah.
And that was the first time where she got tired of covering my eyes and finally told me to go watch the Care Bear movie. So I went and watched the Care Bear movie by myself at 9 years old while she watched the rest of Lady Hawk by herself.
Wow. Wow. Gee whiz.
So my memory of Lady Hawk is the Care Bears movie.
Great moments in parenting.
Great moments in parenting.
Lady Hawk, the only thing I remember is that Rutger Hauer was in Lady Hawk, right? I think he was
so. And Matthew Broderick.
That
was the big to do because of Ferris Bueller.
We have not talked about, but we've certainly referenced on Cinema Insomnia a great deal, and certainly one of my all-time favorite holiday movies, without a doubt. Do you know what I'm going to say?
Nightmare Before September?
No, not even close. Scrooge.
Oh.
Bill Murray's Scrooge. I love that movie. I think it's one of my favorite versions of A Christmas Carol. I love the fact that he's a TV executive and it's that world of TV because that really resonates with me because I always wanted to work in TV and then I did work in TV. So all of that really resonates with me.
We have a commercial on this podcast that came from that movie.
Oh yeah,
because it tests well with cats and dogs who watch TV.
Right. Yes, yes, that's right. We do reference that because we were talking about how they were stapling antlers to the mice. Right, and trying to make mice perform in the TV version of Scrooge in the movie because they realized that cats and dogs were starting to watch television and they wanted to capitalize on that. What a funny movie! What an amazing cast! One of the best moments for Bill Murray, I think. Pardon me. Wow, my stomach revolted. I was so excited about the Scrooge movie.
Definitely revolting.
But it's I think it holds up extremely well. And if you haven't seen Scrooge, man, do yourself a treat and watch it because it is really funny. It's written by Michael O'Donoghue, who was one of the original writers from Saturday Night Live.
Right. And he had the Donahue Show, right?
No, that's a different. guy. Yeah, different guy. Michael O'Donnell.
Did he work on The Sixth Sense?
No, he did not. He worked on National Lampoon. So he was editor of National Lampoon for a while and worked on a lot of the National Lampoon albums and stuff. So the humor for a Christmas movie, the humor is really dark. I love the fake commercials and stuff, like The Night the Reindeer Died, which is like the Bionic Man saving Santa Claus with machine guns. I mean, all that stuff is so great, and it seems like it gets more relevant as years go on. But yeah, that was something I definitely wanted to bring up with Scrooge, because that movie, it kind of reminds me of Ghostbusters in a way where the humor lands so well, the script is really tight and smart, and the effects are amazing. Like the ghosts are really amazing in Scrooge. Like all of the versions of the Christmas past, present, and future, all of them are really impressive from a special effects standpoint.
Yeah, and death.
Oh yeah,
death
crap. Yeah, for sure. Anyhow, so that was that.
I'm trying to find. I couldn't find the name. Who's the taxi driver? Because I feel like that launched his career. I remember. All of a sudden,
like Buster Poindexter.
Is that who it is?
I mean, that's one of his aliases. But yeah, he was the musical director on Saturday Night Live for a while.
Yeah,
and he's a musician in his own right.
And I want to say, like, after Scrooge, like, he had a musical hit that they played roughly around the same time, and I just remember it just being closely tied to Scrooge for some reason.
Yeah,
it could be just my childhood brain, but that's
it's a little bit your childhood brain. But that was probably the most visible that guy ever was as a musician, or gosh, I'm looking at the cast right now. Bobcat Goldthwait, Carol Kane, Robert Mitchum,
Karen Allen,
Karen Allen. Oh boy, Jamie Farr is in that movie.
Apparently,
Buddy Hackett is in that movie. John Houseman is in that movie. Robert Goulet is in that movie. Lee Majors is in that movie.
Yeah, he's Scrooged. Yeah,
Scrooge, he is Scrooge in the production that they're putting on for the TV station.
Mary Lou Retton.
Mary Lou Retton,
which may be a lost reference for people nowadays.
Oh yeah,
Olympic gold medal winner, for gymnastics.
Yes. She was so perky. She'd be on the cover of like Dynamite magazine or something. Okay, here we go.
Was she the one that she hurt her ankle and they had to carry her off, or is that a different gymnast?
No, that's a different gymnast altogether. Let's see, Mary Lou Retton as herself. I'm trying to get I'm looking for the cab driver.
You're having the same problem I'm having. I don't see it either. Yeah, it's weird. He's not.
Mary Lou Retton's coach.
The list, and he's not. Solid Gold Dancers. There's another reference that probably
Solid Gold Dancers. Yeah, a friend of mine was in a band called Bourgeois Tag. My friend Scott Moon, who's one of our crew on Cinema Insomnia, and still does music and stuff for us occasionally. He did the hyperspace mix of Cinema Insomnia, but he was in a band called Bourgeois Tag. And the brand like got huge. They had a huge hit that charted called Mutual Surrender, and they were on the Tonight Show and everything. And and the success of the band just kind of broke them up, which happens a lot. But he was just glad that they broke up before they had to perform on Solid Gold, because they were scheduled to perform on Solid Gold.
No.
And he as a musician, that was his offended his professional sensibilities was to be on Solid Gold. I don't see him on here at all.
You know what I do see, and it's kind of I find hilarious. We can't find him, but we can find Buck the dog from Married with Children had a role in Scrooged.
Wow. Wow. Okay, let me look up Buster Poindexter separately. Buster Poindexter. He has a real name, though, and I think that's obviously not his real. Buster Poindexter, Hit the Road, Jack. Here's his singing. Hot, hot, hot.
Hot, hot,
All
hot.
his singing
That's the song.
stuff comes.
That was the song that was super popular when I was.
matter, Bartholomew von Puss Puss? You're not eating your kitty gruel.
Jeez, that cat is really ticked off. You better do something about it, Mr. Lobo.
Right, Paul. I'm going to play for her our podcast. You know, it's not like those other podcasts. It's experimental and weird and full of healthful variety.
That's probably because we emphasize the odd in our podcast.
They like how we talk movies, talk shop, play games, do audio dramas, do interviews, you know, take her to the airport, the laundromat, all that. She even likes how we not talk about things.
Yeah, like not talking about Star Wars or how we not talk about Jurassic Park. Basically any show that ends in a one. Hey, look, she's eating again. Slow down, kitty. You're gonna choke.
She loves it. The Sleepless Nights podcast is the 3 a.m. conversation that cats of all breeds and temperaments crave. You and your cats can listen to my pantsless producer, Paul Sanders, and I on the Sleepless Nights podcast with Mr. Lobo on Spotify, iTunes, and wherever you listen to podcasts.
Can you hand me a paper towel?
David Johansen is who he really is.
Ah.
And he doesn't look at all like
There
himself
he is. No,
now.
yeah,
he looks crazy now.
He's the sixth one in.
He looks like a Shaggy.
Wow.
He looks like if you took Stephen King and Shaggy and combined them into one, and Mick Jagger and combined them into one person. But yeah, that's why we didn't see him in there. And Scrooge was in. There we go. He performed Brown Eyed Girl in the movie too. The song Brown Eyed Girl in the movie.
Okay.
And
Tales from the Crypt is the movie I was trying
Ghost
to
of Christmas Past is what he's credited as. It's funny how we both want to just call him the cab driver.
Right.
But yes, he's the Ghost of Christmas Past, and man, he does not look as slick as he looked in the 80s. Unlike Carol Kane, who still looks amazing, and Bobcat Goldthwait, who still looks the same. And John Glover, who still looks the same.
Right. Yeah, it's between Scrooge, that hot, and Tales from the Dark Side, where he's trying to assassinate the cat.
Yeah,
is the three roles that I recognize him the most.
It's interesting because I don't know who was his agent at that time, but he went from being, like I said, a musician and someone who's just kind of in that music world to just being very visible in TV and movies for a short period of time. But that doesn't get us to Richard Donner. Now, we talked about Lethal Weapon. Did we get into the fact that he's been 3 days to retirement for 40 years? Did we bring that up?
But technically, at the end of the first one, he decides that he can't retire. There's a fourth. And the third movie, it pretty much comes across that Riggs, he's like, you're breaking up the band, you're breaking up the team, and Riggs can't go on without him. And so he kind of decides not to retire again by the third movie. By the fourth movie, the fourth movie feels like a definitive end by the time, because they're all having families and moving on by that one. Or in terms of Murtaugh having grandkids. Okay.
But if the first Lethal Weapon movie is what, 1980 what? Do we know?
I could find out. It's sitting right in front of me. 1987, and then the second one was 1989, 87, 89.
Okay, so if Danny Glover's retirement age in 87, let's say, and he's what, 65? Right, that's retirement age?
Probably. I don't know. Can you retire early from the force if you're a detective?
Maybe. Give him the benefit of the doubt. 60.
Okay. I think they do say. Because I think they do say in one of the movies how old he is.
Oh, how old he is?
Yeah.
So if let's say he's 60, supposedly 60 years old in the late 80s. It is 2021, and they were. I mean, when Richard Donner died, they were trying to make another Lethal Weapon movie, which would be the fifth one?
Right. Yes. Correct. Not counting the TV show, but yes.
Okay. The fifth, and not counting Loaded Weapon, the National Lampoon movie.
Can we count that? I want to count that though.
No, don't count that. So that's, let's see here. So, like what, like 40 years or more?
I guess. Okay.
Right? Is that right? Am I doing that wrong? Not quite. 30 years later, right?
Okay. Right.
So if he was 60, 70, 80, 90, he'd be 90 years. If he was trying to retire early, he would be like 90.
Okay. Well,
today.
I mean, he'd still look like he did in 87 because black don't crack, I can say that. I had black friends.
That's right. And I'm 1/4 blind, so I can insult blind people.
Can I take that out of the record now?
No, you know what? You have to sleep in that bed.
Yeah,
you have to lie in it.
I'll live with that.
Because we agreed before the podcast that you weren't going to say black don't crack. So now you have to live with it.
And I went for it. I'm like, all right, hell with it.
You went for it. So, that's, you're just going to have to live with being a racist. You'll just have to be branded for the rest of your career.
No, cancel that pantsless producer.
Cancel that pantsless producer. Put some pants on him first.
Can we create some diffusion? Cancel that pantsless decoy.
Maybe we can create a whole new word. Pansel.
Pansel. Or like the one comment that we got today where they want to see a live version of the podcast as long as the pantsless parts are censored.
That's like tripling the work, right? We have to be in the same place. We have to film the whole thing, and then you have to go back and painstakingly paint out your producer junk from every scene.
Well, maybe I want to censor everything but the producer junk.
Everything's a soft blur except for your crotch. Oh boy, what this is fitting for Richard Donner's memory. I'm so glad we went there.
A one-post salute to Richard Donner.
Now, as a kid, did you ever see the movie The Toy with Richard Pryor?
I have seen The Toy.
As a kid, I liked it. Now, I don't know how that movie plays today. I have no idea, but I did like Jackie Gleason and I did like Richard Pryor. And that movie had some kind of a lot of heart from what I remember. It would be interesting to maybe try and watch that movie today. Because
watched it more recently because I remember when I was a kid, I wasn't allowed to watch it because it was deemed or thought to be racist.
Okay, because he owns him.
Because a white guy owns a black man, and that was racist. Yeah. But I think they call it out fairly early in the movie and what the meaning is and stuff. So
I feel like Richard Pryor wouldn't stand for that. Like I feel like Richard Pryor would be.
He wouldn't be like, okay, let's do it.
No, I think Richard Pryor would hopefully be there to use that humor
as an allegory.
As an allegory, or to teach us something, or to point out something, or to lift the veil on something, or to satirize something. He's too smart not to see the comedic potential of something like that. So you saw it and you enjoyed it?
I from what I remember, it's been a while. I wouldn't mind like rewatching it again. And I've noticed like a lot of these films have been showing up actually on HBO Max because I just recently binge watched Lethal 1 through 4. Like just not too terribly long ago. And Maverick I've just recently watched, which I love because Maverick actually has a Lethal Weapon reference in it. It has a little shout out to Lethal Weapon.
Oh, it does?
Yes.
Maverick does?
Yes.
Wow.
Spoilers, so if you don't want to hear this, skip ahead like 2 minutes. But there's a scene where Maverick goes and he goes to the bank to settle some debt so that he can pay his way into the onto the gambling ship. And during the scene, a bank robbery happens. And when the guy comes in, busts in to rob the bank, Maverick is standing next to the robber, and he reaches over and he pulls down the handkerchief that's covering the robber's face. Yeah. And it's Danny Glover. And they do like a triple take. They keep looking back and forth at each other like 3 times in a row. And then the scene ends where they're loading the horses. And Corey Feldman's in that scene. He's also one of the bank robbers as well. Okay. But they're loading the horses, and as Danny Glover is going out to the horse, he goes, "I'm getting too old for this shit." Wow. He's been too old for this shit for a long time. So that was probably going to be a major line in Lethal Weapon 5 is I'm just too old to shit.
Too old to shit? Yeah. Yeah. Was he must have been playing older, right? Both of them were, right? Because I think Mel Gibson was also playing older than he was
I'd assume
in the original Lethal Weapon, because I think he was probably in his 20s playing someone in his 30s or older.
Right.
And then I think Danny Glover was probably in his 30s playing someone in his 50s or older.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they were both much younger than they were playing in that first film. But it is funny to think that they were still going for it until Richard Donner passed, and Richard Donner was in his 90s trying to make that one more time, trying to go there one more time.
Yeah. Lethal Weapon is one of those movies, and excuse me if I've said this on the podcast before.
Wait, we just sold a T-shirt.
I wonder if I should start putting bells underneath that.
Maybe, yeah.
But I remember
maybe a cash register sound.
Cha-ching. But that was like one of the movies, like when renting from video stores was kind of fairly brand new.
Yeah.
And that was one of the movies like my dad rented, and we'd watched watching it at his place.
Yeah.
And he'd fast forward through like the opening, which has the bare-breasted girl committing suicide in the very beginning. So he would fast forward through that part, so that my young impressionable
he did
eyes,
a better job. He did a better job than your mom.
Yeah, he didn't eject it and put Care Bear movie in, but he fast forwarded.
Or send you into the other room.
Send me into
the
other
Care
room.
Bears on in a different room.
No.
Sent you out.
So he fast forwarded to it, and like we're watching the movie and everything. It's like you can't watch the bare breasts, but all the gratuitous violence throughout the rest of this movie. That was
in the chest.
fine.
That's fine.
That's fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then he pauses the movie and gets up to go to the bathroom. He's like, and so while he's gone, I just rewound it and watched the scene anyway.
Wow, another great moment.
Another great moment in parenting. And I'm probably I often wonder today. It's like, does he know? Because he probably would know. It's like that we didn't leave off on this scene or whatever.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, the movie's back to the beginning.
That was probably one of those things where he just decided to not talk about it.
Probably.
Yeah. I mean. Boy, it is interesting because, like I said, that's another franchise that's really robust and in a totally different. Richard Donner just didn't really stay with one particular genre. He seemed to really kind of do a lot of various things. We were talking about Banana Splits earlier,
right?
He did the Danger Island sequences on Banana Splits, which I believe was the breakthrough role for Jan Michael Vincent, who, of course, was in many, many movies after that. Okay. But Danger Island was one of the few sequences on Banana Splits that were live action. But again, Banana Splits is another thing that's still with us. People had great memories of that show, and they're still trying to extend Banana Splits.
That is Banana Splits is a weird concept of like, well, Five Nights at Freddy's is a super popular thing, and we don't have the rights to it, but we have the rights to this thing that's probably obscure and people don't really know anymore. So let's turn this into a horror genre.
Yeah, it's
that's
weird.
Kind of a weird.
I think we've talked about this on the podcast before. Cha-ching. But the whole thing. It's like when they finally get off their ass and finish a Five Nights at Freddy's movie. We've already had the Banana Splits movie, which again was someone who just didn't want to have to pay for Five Nights at Freddy's, who made a Five Nights at Freddy's movie, and the Willy's Wonderland movie.
Is that the one with Nicolas Cage?
With Nicolas Cage, right? Which is essentially that the premise again, where you've got a bunch of animatronic toys or animatronics gone haywire that need to be destroyed. Children, animatronics for children that go haywire that need to be destroyed. And so by the time they get there, I feel like it's going to be a situation like, when Starship Troopers came out after Aliens, or when the Judge Dredd movie finally came out after RoboCop. It's like someone already kind of got there and mined that premise before, the actual supposed originator of that story. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it is going to be interesting that if audiences are going to be impressed with this premise, because I'm sure by the time it comes out, there'll probably be several other knockoff ones.
Mm.
You know, there'll be whatever the asylum version is of
right.
of Willy's Wonderland or whatever, or 2 more made for sci-fi shows or something. You know.
Well, if they finally make the Five Nights Freddy, are they just going to put in the Gwar song from Sleazy? Everybody rip, everybody rip.
Oh yeah, everybody rip everybody else off. You were talking about him being the executive producer of X-Men Origins,
right?
But he actually was the executive producer for the actual 2000 X-Men movie, also.
Okay.
So that's something that we didn't mention. Yeah, and so that is interesting to think the director of Superman the movie is also executive producer of the X-Men
franchise. Yeah, and I know his wife she's tied to all those things, and I think she's even tied to some of the stuff that's in the MCU now. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of cool. Again, that legacy stemming all the way from the original Superman film. And then Tales from the Crypt, you talked briefly about the cartoon Tales from
that was off
Crypt
mic,
Keeper.
but
Yeah, Secrets of the Crypt Keeper.
Tales from
whatever.
the Crypt Keeper, yeah.
Tales from the Crypt Keeper.
He was the executive producer for 5 episodes.
I guess Free Willy, executive producer on Free Willy, which again, not my favorite movie, but so iconic.
Right.
Like, how often has that been parodied?
I don't know. I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting for Feed Willy.
I saw Free Britney today, and it was in a meme, and it was in that style of that movie. And I'm thinking, who is that for? But people still remember all of the commercials and the trailers and the everything of that. Everything from Lost Boys to Lethal Weapon to Goonies to Lady Hawk. And by the way, he was the executive producer of Final Conflict, which was the Omen 3 movie.
Okay.
So, it's interesting how attached he is to so many things. I think his presence makes a difference, obviously. And speaking of we're going to see if our presence makes a difference and go away for a while. And we'll be back with more Sleepless Nights of Insomnia. Lights, camera, action are all things you cannot enjoy on a podcast. So let's get ready for Alan N. Smithy's Movie Minute. A huge blockbuster success, Superman the movie, 1978, was originally intended by director Richard Donner to be a grand 2-part epic. The film fell behind schedule, and with costs ballooning, Donner's relationship with the producers Alexander and Ilya Salkind got tense. Richard Lester, who had directed The Three Musketeers, was brought in as an assistant director. The climax with Superman turning the world backwards was supposed to be for the second film, but to get the film done, it was used as the first film's ending. Donner was fired from Superman 2, 1980, even though he had shot 75% of the project. Lester was placed as the new director, but was not into making grand epics. He had more of a focus on comedy and camp, and even tried to evoke the garish color scheme of the comics. For example, when the supervillains are using their super breath, a guy on roller skates is blown down the street. Another guy's toupee flies off. Ice cream zips off an ice cream cone into someone's face. A telephone booth falls over and the guy just keeps talking. Lester's antics added nice relief to Superman 2, but was not as welcome with critics and audiences for Superman 3, which Lester did completely on his own. Fans cried out for the Donner cut of Superman 2 for years, and finally, in 2006, alternate takes, audition footage, and the whole world being turned backward thing was cleverly edited back into Superman 2, which paved the way for future alternate versions of films like the Snyder Cut of Justice League 2021. I don't know. I kind of want to redo this movie minute.
It sucks.
We're back with more of the Sleepless Nights podcast, and we are remembering Richard Donner. And I find myself being, I don't know, I get kind of like choked up. Like when I hear the theme to Superman, or when I see like that logo of the Superman symbol made out of chrome, or those opening titles, those giant names like flying at you and streaking through you. I mean, sitting in the theater during that title sequence was like a religious experience as a kid. There wasn't even anything happening yet.
I wouldn't know I was watching the Care Bear movie.
Oh yeah, you were in the other theater watching the Care Bear movie. You didn't want it. Your mom didn't want you to see Miss Tessmacher.
Yeah, my fondest memories of Richard Donner movies is the Care Bear movies. He did a good job. He did a great job on that Care Bear movie.
Maybe he was the executive producer on so many things. I wouldn't be surprised.
He probably is,
if somehow connected to the Care Bear movie. I mean, very quickly. I mean, I'm just looking at his credits. Route 66 was a huge show. I mean, it's hard to know now because it's so much time has passed. But The Rifleman was a huge show. My grandfather loved that show. I mean, The Detectives was a huge show.
Right.
Combat was a huge show. We mentioned Twilight Zone. He did 6 episodes of The Twilight Zone, including, one of my all-time favorites, which is Nightmare at 20,000 Feet.
Right.
But
my
he
favorite
also,
by extension, because I remember it from the movie. I'd probably seen the movie before I saw the actual episode.
Yeah. Okay. And I sort of remember Come Wander With Me, which is the one about the rockabilly singer who's trying to find a new sound. From Agnes with Love was a Twilight Zone episode I really remember also because, it had a huge supercomputer in it. And I loved, anything with robots and computers, just vaguely sci-fi. I was all in. And Wally Cox was this nerdy guy who I think he was in love with one of the secretaries in the front room. And so he's trying to ask love advice from this supercomputer, Agnes. And over the course of all of these questions, you could tell Agnes is falling for this nerdy guy. And so it's, he's asking about how he's going to impress the secretary. And the computer's like, hey, you got, there's someone else who really likes you a whole lot, and who could that be, So, I thought that was another one that had
I guess they technically remade that, didn't they? That's the movie Her. Isn't that basically the plot to that?
I guess so. Yeah, his computer falls in love with him. Yeah, I suppose that's true. Have you ever seen the episode The Brain Center at Whipple's?
No, but I can probably guess the premise. They're trying to stop Mr. Whipple from squeezing the Charmin. Is that close?
No, not even close. No, that's the wrong Mr. Whipple. I feel like we should do something with spiritualism where we could say, "Don't squeeze the shaman."
The shaman.
Yeah, we'll have to write something for that. That could be our own Twilight Zone episode.
And you don't mean the Pokemon shaman?
No. I mean like a holy man, a shaman.
All right.
And you don't want holy toilet paper for sure. But Brain Center at Whipple's, I believe I remember the episode correctly, is about automation. And this corporate CEO tries to replace everyone in the factory with a machine. And at the very end of the episode, it's just him, the one guy working in an empty factory full of machines. But then finally the machines decide that he's unnecessary and then he's replaced also. So it's just machines working the plant. And no humans at all. I believe that's the twist. Spoilers, if that is the twist.
Oh, so it's Superman 3.
Richard Lester ripping off Richard Donner once again. Anyhow,
I hated that scene in Superman 3. By the way,
when the woman is taken over by computers?
Where the computer pulls her into pulls her into it, and she takes her over and. All the circuitry wraps around her, and she opens up her eyes, and they're like white.
Yeah, no, that was no doubt. That was chilling stuff. But Richard Donner had nothing to do with that. I don't think.
Sorry,
I don't think he did. But Richard Pryor was in that movie, who was in The Toy. So I don't. How are these things all connected? I don't know. But anyhow, coming back to his legacy, diving out of Twilight Zone again, even though I could talk about Twilight Zone all day. The Fugitive was another show. I mean, the mysterious one-armed man that they were trying to find. The Fugitive was also made into a movie. Get Smart was made into a movie.
Gilligan's Island's on here. Which episodes did he direct? Do you remember any of the plots of them?
Yes, I do remember. I remember that all the ones he directed, they never got off the island. Mm-hmm. That is one thing I remember for sure.
I'm sure the professor invented something.
With coconuts?
Yeah, and Marianne had coconuts.
Or did Ginger have coconuts?
Oh, they all had coconuts. Who cares?
Is that really an invention, or is it more of a discovery?
Well, whatever. It depends on how you want to handle this.
I'm not going to handle Ginger's coconuts on this podcast.
Maybe the Skippers. Oh, lovey. Imagine the two girls. Then you do Mr. Howell's voice.
I'm the genie.
Oh, lovey. I'm the genie. It's funny is that we did Ginger, Marianne, but we didn't do Mrs. Howell at all. She didn't even rank. The Skipper ranked before we even got to Mrs. Howell.
That's not fair for Mrs. Howell.
Might as well piss off the feminists in the same episode.
Yeah, this is our hedonistic racist episode in honor of Richard Donner. In honor of Richard Donner, that rhymes.
Ooh, I wonder if he knew that.
Going back to it, we mentioned the Banana Splits stuff. We talked about Wild Wild West. Mm-hmm. We talked about
Jericho. Now, did you watch? Are you allowed to watch Jericho? Does this TV series hate you, or you hate it?
Yeah, I think it called me names. I don't know if I want to go into that right now. I think it might be a different Jericho.
Oh, okay.
A lot of these shows my dad watched, like Ironside, which is, I believe that's Raymond Burr again as a detective, only in a wheelchair, so they called him Ironside, which it's weird because I always thought it was Ironsides, but it's Ironside. And it's like Nordstrom and Nordstrom's. It's not Espresso, it's Espresso. Okay.
A lot of detective shows.
Banyan was another one my dad watched. Cannon was another one my dad watched. Streets of San Francisco, my dad watched. Kojak, my dad watched.
Mm-hmm. They tried to reboot that too, didn't they? The TV show.
Yeah. I think they
tried
did.
to make that into a new TV series.
But it is interesting that, like I said, a lot of these movies are genre like Superman 2 and Lady Hawk and Goonies, but a lot of them were not. Like, Inside Moves, I couldn't tell you what that movie's about. Do you know what Inside Moves is about? Is it about football?
It's about inside moves. It's about moves that are on the inside.
Or Radio Flyer, I remember I didn't go see. Or I remember it would come on cable a lot, and I have seen scenes from it. I know it deals with the child abuse or something. It deals with some heavy issues, which is why I didn't watch it, because I just wasn't in the mood for something serious. But that's an acclaimed film, and named after the Red Wagon, the Radio Flyer, that the two boys have, and an early role for Elijah Wood, and as we learned, not his first role, because that was in Back to the Future
2. Yeah.
2.
You mean you got to use your hands? That's the baby's toy. Does he say that, or does the kid that's with him say that?
No, I think Elijah Wood
make money for saying that line?
He does say that. Yeah, I think he does say that. Maybe it was the other kid. I can't remember now. Anyhow, it doesn't matter because Richard Donner had nothing to do with Back to the Future.
But it's connected. It's all connected.
Yes, it's all connected. And it is interesting because there is kind of an alumni, right? It's like there's Steven Spielberg and George Lucas and Joe Dante and I would put John Landis in that category. It's like this certain echelon of visionary filmmakers who all kind of hit their stride at the same time. It was like, we had Superman. It was the rise of the blockbuster is what it was. And movies weren't like that before Jaws, before The Omen, and before Superman. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. And it all overlaps too, because it's like, you get Richard Donner and you get Steven Spielberg together and you get the Goonies.
Right, or you get the Twilight Zone movie because they
get the Twilight Zone movie.
Yeah, because they all worked with each other and helped each other be even more visionary. It wasn't just them working alone and being visionary on their own. They all overlapped.
Right.
Yeah, really interesting.
You get Shane Black and Richard Donner together, and you get Lethal Weapon.
Right.
And then you get Shane Black to work with, that other guy that was on our show.
Yes.
Damn it.
That other guy who's on our show.
Oh, it was on the tip of my
Decker?
Fred Decker. God damn it.
Fred Decker.
With the Predator.
With the Predator, right. It's amazing to me because I think that, it's one thing to, we've got sort of our Rob Zombies and our Tim Burtons, and we have a lot of these sort of visionary directors. But, to be known as being a team player, to be known as being a collaborator, to be known as being part of a cadre or like how Fred Decker called him, a mentor, a friend, someone who sees your talent and goes, all right, kid, you know what? Why don't you direct this one? You know what I mean? That's really a special kind of person who can look at a project beyond their own star and their own fame and their own glory and their own creative desires, and to try to import that onto others or help others shine,
Right.
And it seems to me in his career, he's helped a lot of people shine, and a lot of people he keeps bringing back. Like we were talking about Mel Gibson. I mean, there must be something about Mel Gibson that he just really thinks is extra special because he just keeps putting him in his projects.
Over and over and over again. Yes.
Yeah. So, that and what you're talking about, Danny Glover being in
doing a cameo in Maverick. Yes.
Yeah. So obviously all these people, he still likes all of those people that he's worked with, and all of those people still like him.
Right.
Or still liked him.
Right.
So what a legacy to leave. What an amazing array of, I've got like 100 movies I want to watch over again.
Right. And
now.
Like we said at the beginning of the show, it's just so insane of like how many of these films have already made it to in the podcast of things that we always talk about that we were inspired or enjoyed in our childhood or whatever, There's and like the list just keeps going on and on as we just keep going through, and it's like, oh wow, there's this. Oh, he executive produced that.
Right. And it is coming, and it saddens me, and I'm getting a little choked up right now because it's like we need a Richard Donner to do Superman. Not him, obviously, can't ever be him again, but we need somebody who has that combination of skill sets where you can look at something and give it heart, give it action, give it humor, and have a real reverence for the source material, but also a real understanding of what audiences like, a humanistic quality that is really going to be looking beyond just action figures, because I think I'm looking at all these projects, and a lot of what they have in common is really charming performances from characters you like, and charming, everyone in Superman's charming. Everyone in Lethal Weapon is charming. Mm-hmm. Everyone in Scrooge is charming.
Right.
Everyone in The Toy is charming.
Right.
And
there's not a bad batch in like any of this. There's like there may be movies that rank a little low, but there are not really very many movies on here where it's like,
No, they're not like a lot of Kerstinkers, right? A lot of like super misunderstood, but totally low rank, low rent B films. There's not that. A lot of the stuff is of quality. Even Wild Wild West is of quality.
Right.
It definitely was a miss with a lot of people.
Right.
But again, I feel like kind of forecasted the whole steampunk,
Well, he
thing.
didn't do the movie. He did the TV show.
Oh, yeah, he didn't do the movies. That's not his fault. And the TV show was amazing.
Right.
The TV show was amazing. Amazing enough to try to bring it back for that terrible movie. Mm-hmm. But, so he doesn't even have that blemish on his record with that. But anyhow, yeah, so we salute you, Richard Donner. I'd like to say you're going to be missed, but you've left behind so much for us. You've given us so much. So thank you for all of your service, all of your work, all your inspiring things. Hopefully we can create anything that has a smidgen of this sort of impact that your career has had. And, thanks for being Superman for reals. I just wish we could turn the world backwards and bring you back.
And thanks for bringing Care Bears the movie to me.
Paul, why don't you just go in the other room and finish watching Care Bears?
Okay, but I'm going to secretly watch Lethal Weapon instead.
You have been listening to the Sleepless Nights podcast, or should we say, pODDcast.
pODDcast.
Emphasis on the odd. Our theme is by Mars Homeworld at Deadhouse Music. Our opening announcement is by Ophelia Necro. She does a radio show called Suicide Watch. And you could reach Mr. Lobo at cinemainsomnia.com, or find me on YouTube, YouTube/Mr. Lobo, MISTERLOBO. Mr. Lobo on Facebook, Facebook/MR.LOBO, or on Twitter, at Mr. Lobo, MISTERLOBO.
Or you can find myself, Paul Sanders, or better known as Bestow TV, at Bestow.tv, on YouTube /Bestow TV, on Twitter at Bestow Prod, PROD, and on Facebook, Bestow TV.
If you want to place an advertisement with this podcast, and gosh, why wouldn't you? We could be talking about you right now. Contact us, Mr. Lobo at cinemainsomnia.com. That's MRLOBO @CINEMAINSOMNIA.com. Or support us on Patreon. Patreon supporters get to hear this podcast before anyone else, and a lot of other great stuff, right, Paul?
Sure.
Doesn't get it better than that, right? So come join the fun at
patreon.com/Sleepless Nights Podcast.
That's
patreon.com/Sleepless Nights Podcast.
Please stay up with us next week for another Sleepless Nights podcast. Or should we say, pODDcast.
pODDcast.
The best thing about being an insomniac is never having to say goodnight.
Good night.